All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this presentation on just how to find the right college for you, particularly if you're starting from scratch. And if you're not starting from scratch and you have a couple already down, then we can just continue your college search. So, kind of Sarah just told you a lot about me. So I'll quickly gloss over, kind of glean over everything. But overall, I have been doing this for about 12 years now, and there is a moment I pause and say, wow, I'm old enough to say I've been doing this for 12 years. So, yes, I've been doing this for about 12 years. And I originally started with test prep and then basically moved on to the college searches, the essays, and every single part. So, and I used to do academic tutoring. So, I'm pretty much familiar with just about every aspect of high school education or particularly the college applications process, which is very helpful when I'm talking about timelines and when to do, what to do. I know when the academic projects kick in or when test prep needs to happen, so it can better organize everything for you. Now, the overall goal of this whole purpose of doing presentations at libraries is just to give out all this information for free because I think there's a lack of information that comes from high schools that we were hoping would come. And that was how I had to navigate it when I was in high school. It's just you're making it up as you go. You're looking at what others are doing, the ones who are a year ahead of you, or if you're a parent, you're asking your friends what their kids are doing, and so on. So I kind of and what happens when you do that is that it leads to a lot of misinformation being passed around, a lot of rumors. Oh, but the ACT was easier than the SAT, or oh, but they did this application in this program, or they started studying for test prep back when da 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 da. And there's a lot of just misconceptions that happen because maybe something that works for one student doesn't necessarily work for this other student. So my goal is really, we've done these series of talks for pretty much free at least 4 different libraries across Connecticut at this point, and I will happily do more if those libraries will let me in, if the other libraries will let me in. But overall, the point is just to give this out for free. And you're probably wondering, then how the heck does she make any money? Well, I pretty much, it's if you now choose to delegate the task. So you are an informed parent and now you choose to delegate it, that's when I would come into the picture. But I've come across too many businesses, particularly when it comes to test prep. It's really been, yeah, PSATs, SATs, sometimes with college counselors, but they're not always ethical. And that bothered me because, well, it kind of goes against core values that we're taught as kids, and then you grow up and suddenly your values are allowed to change like that. So I kind of like sticking to this idea of I will inform you, I will educate you when you do seek out whoever you want to at any point in time, if you want to, then you're at least informed and no one's taking advantage of you. And if you decide not to seek out anyone, then it shouldn't be something you're obligated to do. Okay, so with that said, let's move on. If you're interested in all that free material, so I believe in making 95 to 98% of all this material free, and you can find it on my website, which is letstalkcollege.co or .org. I own both of the domains. Because it used to be .org and then I switched it to .co, but quite literally everything is here. So yes, you'll get my PowerPoint, but there's also this article over here, which if you click on it, it covers pretty much everything we're about to talk about. And it has, I believe I posted a little quiz on just what kind of college would be good for you. So something you can check out if you're interested. All right. And then of course, if you prefer it in bite-sized pieces because everything just seems so overwhelming, then please check out the social media. So as I was talking to one of our attendees earlier, she tends to like all the stuff I do. She's very supportive. But this will be sent to you. But just to give you an idea, it really is in bite-sized pieces. And hopefully Facebook lets me come on when I'm not signed on. So you have really just the snippets, so you're not loaded up, and this is for today, but you're not just overwhelmed with a bunch of information thrown at you and having to figure out how to navigate it. Okay. All right. So with that said, now let's get to our agenda for today. And I purposely have it on PowerPoint view or not on PowerPoint view because I'm going to be jumping to the internet and then jumping back to the PowerPoint slides and then jumping back to the internet. So anything I do online, while it's going to be on the recorded call on YouTube, it's not on the PowerPoint. So if you feel that you need to take notes on certain aspects, I recommend doing so for everything I post, not everything, but anything I post on and I pull up on the internet. Some of those will, the mes sort of mentions will be on the PowerPoint, but if you see something, then just feel free to write that down. All right, today's topics. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about just what are your preferences as when it comes to the college search. One of the things that happened during COVID is that a lot of families decided to stay closer to home. And now everyone's starting to slightly spread out again. But the other thing that's happening, as we were kind of referring to prior to our starting, is gap years are becoming a little bit more popular because university pricing is going a little bit insane. It's almost like someone took a dartboard with a bunch of numbers on it and just randomly threw darts at it to figure out, hey, what should college cost now? Um, so as university gets more expensive and as just sort of trying to make things a little bit more not just affordable, but you really tailored to what a teenager wants, families have been starting to take gap years, or they've just been getting a little bit pickier in terms of what kinds of universities they want to apply to, especially when it comes to the acceptance rates, because more and more students are applying to universities that have or they're having more safeties, let's put it that way. So safeties, by definition, are universities that have higher than a 50% acceptance rate. I would go as far as to say higher than a 60% acceptance rate, just because of the flood of applications that are now going in. All right, then we'll talk a little bit about databases. In fact, we're actually going to go on a database and run college search. So that'll be interesting because we'll see all the different filters that come into play as we start narrowing down. And we're going to narrow down a little bit further by looking at the 5 categories that you should always, always, always look into before you even decide that, hey, this university is worth our time and money to go visit. And of course, when you do decide to go visit, what should you look at? So we'll talk about college tours. What are the formats of college tours? What kind of questions should you ask? Or even when you're around campus, what should you look for? And then finally, just a brief overview as on just on perspective on what kind of mindset should you walk in with when you're walking into your college search. All right, and finally, just a quick conclusion Q&A. But as Sarah mentioned, I will be taking questions all throughout the presentation. So if you have questions at any point, then please post them in the chat. And I will get to them at a good, appropriate stopping point throughout the presentation. All right, so first step, what are your preferences when you are thinking about college, when you're thinking about this entire process? Do you have a location preference? Do you have any kind of academic preference? So just this, I did this presentation two days ago, and we had one student who was looking at business on entrepreneurship, but was also but had disabilities to consider as well. So is that a factor? Then I had another student who wanted to go in with zoology, which was interesting. You don't get that very often. So wanted to go in for zoology programs. And now we're looking at a whole different ball game, right? And one of the things that we tend to get caught up with is ranking systems. So, oh, but how top notch is this university nationally? And is it well known? Do people, is this going to be the one that helps me get the network and da 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 da? And because we go more for the national rankings, we tend to underestimate. That's really what it is. We tend to underestimate the universities that don't have the national rankings, but have amazing programs. They just don't have the best marketing department. So you might not have heard of this university. Okay. And that's really what a lot of this knowing the university and not knowing the university is based out of. It's not necessarily just the ranking system so much as their marketing efforts. Some universities have amazing academics. And one of my students and I were just looking at yesterday. Wow, feels so long ago. Just yesterday we were looking at film and television because he was really interested in that idea of film, television, cinematography, sound. I learn new things as we go through this because I'm not a creative. So every time we explore these majors, it's always didn't know that existed, but that sounds kind of cool. Sound design, I think is what's the class called. So we were exploring all of that. And that was at one of the lesser known universities. But the program was amazing, right? We looked at the universities, and the moment we got on the website and started looking at the list of classes, we knew that was a fit for him. That we didn't really have to look much for, we didn't have to say yay or nay. It was just a definite highlight. Yes. So that's something to consider is when you're looking at academics, it doesn't have to be this top notch university that everybody knows about. Rather, you want the university with the best program, the best curriculum for your teenager. Because if they are going to thrive at that university, they themselves will take the extra step to go ahead and do the research, find the internships in a smaller community or a bigger community. They'll figure out their world, they'll meet the right people, and so on. But ultimately, you want a university where your teenager is going to take initiative. They're not just going to wait for the opportunities to come to them, because that doesn't really happen as much in college. It's all about being proactive and knocking on the right doors. And then, yes, the opportunities will be there, but only for those who are proactive enough. Okay. And then sports. Now, sports could be whether you are an athlete and are looking for a school with D1, D2, D3 sports, or it might be, are you interested in sports culture and that school spirit atmosphere? And I have a student who he's interested in anthropology, but then he was hoping for some tailgating. Just that's the vibe he would like. It's not a deal breaker for him, but that's something to consider. Is it a deal breaker for you, or you wouldn't mind either way? And then of course financial aid, because as we said earlier, yes, university is getting more and more expensive. So how much aid is the university willing to offer? And on this, I will actually point out that I've had students this year who've gotten into Northeastern, and even though one was accepted early decision, one was accepted on regular decision, and they come from vastly different financial backgrounds, even though they filled out their CSS or one of them filled out the CSS profile, did the FAFSA, everything else, she wasn't really offered as much money. And when I was talking to another college counselor last week, we were both talking about this, that, oh, was it just me as a college counselor? Did I mess this up for my student? And it turns out that her students were facing the same issue, which is that a lot of these top universities, even though they are getting more and more, maybe it's because they're getting more and more applications and their acceptance rates are getting lower and lower because of this test optional for SAT, ACT, um, which by the way is moving towards test required just for anyone who is currently a sophomore or under, or even for juniors. But back to topic. What seems to be happening is that these top universities are not offering the funding that most students have been heard of receiving previously or are hoping to receive now. So that is something to factor in when you are applying, that yes, you might have gotten accepted into Northeastern or Boston University, but what is the sticker price or what is the price you would be paying? Okay. And then of course, family legacy. So a lot of universities are actually doing away with legacy, especially because with affirmative action canceled, if there's no advantage for those who are genuinely facing issues in their upbringing and their lack of resources, then the universities have flipped it and said, okay, well, in that case, the other students who really have done nothing, the student hasn't done anything, the parent has attended this university, well, they also should not receive this extra zinger to their application. So check if you are interested in something with in a university that may have previously done family, like the legacy admissions, double check again to make sure that they still have that active. And if they don't, then now at least you are aware as you move across your college search data, your experience. All right, then we have the database. So the database that I prefer looking at initially, there are many, many, many out there, and I want to put that there because I'm sure you've heard of Naviance, you've heard of School Links, which I believe Barlow is also switching to. I know Weston switched to it. I can't remember if it's Barlow that's switching to it or Wilton that's switching to it, but either way, it looks like that's the new kid in town, the new cool kid in town. So either whatever other databases you want to use. I just like using College Boards because they have a monopoly on our education system, particularly for the high school and high school to college transition. So with the PSATs, they tend to collect your information and then they can sell this with your permission, because on the PSATs, you checked a box that said universities were allowed to contact you. So with your permission, they sell your information to different universities. And that's how currently all the juniors and even the seniors probably getting bombarded with information. and flyers and emails from different universities. So College Board has kind of this really wholesome database, okay? Because universities are going there for information. So I like the College Board search as a valuable resource for you. So and I'm just going to Google things to show you what I'm entering into Google so that you know exactly how to get to it. Just College Board, college search. College Board, if you are not familiar with it, is a very, very important website to know because all things related to your AP exams, as they're coming up in the next what, 2 weeks. So AP scores are on there, your SAT scores are on there, all the SAT score reporting. So if you need to send your scores to university, you do it on College Board. If you need to do the CSS profile for financial aid, that's also College Board. If you need to, there's a scholarship database also for College Board as well. So College Board, like I said, monopoly in the education system, they've really branched to everything, which makes it easier for you as a parent and for me as someone explaining it. It's really your one-stop shop. So now, once you get to the College Board website, if you have a major in mind, then by all means pick, okay? And if anybody wants to share in the chat a field that they're looking at or their teenagers looking at, then please do. And while I'm waiting for responses in the chat, I will make note that whenever you're allowed to choose multiple majors or multiple different sections in this majors category, but this will only filter for universities that have all of the above. So since I don't think anyone's posted in the chat, that's okay. I'll go for some of the common ones. Let's go back. One of the common ones I get a lot of students who want to do psychology. So let's do psychology. Now in psychology, we have all of these options, right? So let's say I do general, just to make sure it's there. Let's say I do social psychology because some students are more interested in that. They don't necessarily recognize it. I'm just going to leave it at those two for now. So this will read as and, not or. Okay. I see the question in the chat of how do you decide on a major when you're unsure? We're going to talk about that in just a sec as well. So this particular majors option is only for students who do know what it is, or not know, because that I don't expect 17, 18-year-olds to just know what they want to do. They don't know what most of the jobs that exist out there are. Most of them cannot even tell me what their parents do. So I really just take everything they say with a grain of salt, a pound of salt, not a grain, a pound of salt, because I know maybe there's a chance they'll want to change. So let's say they're leaning towards psychology and this. First, this will read as and. So now when I do show colleges, it's really going to show me the universities that have the psychology and the general psychology and the social psychology programs. Okay. Now, if you don't know what it is you want to do, then just leave that majors category blank. Do not enter information for any of the categories that you have no preferences for, because it is possible to narrow this search down so much that no universities pop up. So even though there are 2,000 universities, 2,000 plus universities with 4-year programs, so bachelor's degrees available in the country, chances are the university, when sent this survey from College Board of, hey, what programs do you offer? They may not have ticked all the boxes. So, so as a result, they probably will not show up in the search, okay? Even if they have the program, they just may not show up in the search. The other thing you can do is narrow by location. So we pick the majors, but even if you don't have a major or anything picked, maybe you have an idea. Some students, the first thing they say is, I don't want to be in Connecticut anymore. I want to go somewhere else. I'm tired of Connecticut. There's nothing here. Okay, so are they leaning towards anywhere? Maybe they want to go towards the South, North Carolina, South Carolina. Some want to go to Florida. Some maybe Texas or Michigan. So I'm just gonna and Maryland or not Maryland, Massachusetts is a popular one. We can also enter that one. Really just feel free to pick any state that you think your teenager would be open to, and also if anything that maybe you have family in case you're concerned something might happen. But okay, we have that many, but I can always add in more later. I guess. No, well, sure, why not? Okay, continue. and then show colleges. Again, it's going to keep narrowing down. Type of university, 4-year. I think just about everybody on this call is really concerned about the bachelor's degrees, so the 4-year programs. And then let's see, public, maybe you care, maybe you don't care, but look, you do have an option for career and technical if you are interested. It's actually, there was an article that came out, I think last week, that pretty much said that Gen Z, is it Gen Z? Yeah, because the other ones are alpha or something. Yeah, so Gen Z is really going more and more into the career and technical fields as opposed to going into the 4-year degree. So they're reviving all the technical fields. And then if you care or have any preferences for any missions, special missions, then by all means, check that off. But if not, just leave it alone. Same thing goes here. And then just show colleges. All right. Then affordability. So maybe there is a certain, maybe you have a preference, maybe you don't have a preference. I'm just going to leave that blank for just general. And then that doesn't narrow down anything because I did not pick anything. Okay. Size of the university. So I've had a lot of students who don't want it to be 30,000 because, or 3,000, sorry, because that's too small. So maybe you want mid-sized and maybe you prefer large universities. Okay. Any location preferences? Now, of course, if you're trying to go into equestrian training, then you're probably in the rural. There's no city option there. And then suburbs, whatever else. Most students generally pick the urban and suburbs. If you have any other preferences, sorry about the dogs. Fortunately, I can't really do much about him right now. But yeah, so any other activities that students might be interested in as for fun, not as something to study. So I've had students who maybe they played the cello for 8 years of their lives and now they're not studying music. They want to do something else, but it'd be fun to be in an after school anything. By the way, please do let me know if the barking is getting to you, because then I'll put them in a room or I'll figure something out. But okay, so then yes, consider this. Now keep in mind again that there are options for these as majors, which is different than these for fun. Okay. Then of course any kind of disability support that you might need or be interested in for your teenager. Do we have any teenagers on the call or do we only have parents on the call? Right. AP exams and such. Admissions. Okay. So this is basically how competitive is the university, and that is up to you. Completely your choice as to how competitive universities you want to go into. Acceptance rates, we have a variety. Oh, thank you, Danielle. Okay. All right. And Danielle, if you could also post what grade you're in. Just if you're that'll help towards the end and as I talk through this as well. Because some things parents need to know and some things it's teenagers should know and hear it from someone who's not their parent. Okay. All right, so then we have acceptance rates. So with acceptance rates, again, how selective of a program do you want? Now, I will say this, that if you were to enter your SAT range or current score and your rough GPA, which I know if you're at Barlow, then, or if you're usually it's Barlow. A couple high schools just don't give out their the student GPA. So students have to sit down with their transcripts or their Power School accounts open and then go to third-party websites to try and calculate their GPAs. I highly recommend calculating your GPAs if it's not given to you by your school, because particularly if you're getting into junior year, then it's time to know your numbers. It's important to know your numbers because it really is a big filtering criteria. All right. And then application deadlines, we have no preferences. And you can also leave the application type blank as well. Okay, so maybe you do have preferences. Maybe the preferences are these three. Okay, we'll do show colleges and you have 101. So we're still not narrowing it down by much. All right, then we'll do bachelor's degrees, which I doubt will change much. Okay, all right. Then, so let's say this is actually normal to have this many universities to start off with as you start your search, not your final college list by any means. Your final college list will have approximately 8 to 12 universities that you're applying to. This year it got a little bit crazy because students from Wilton for whatever reason, upon I don't know whose advice, but we're applying to 15, 20, 25 universities, which is insane. It's insane because there's a lot of mini like the supplementals and essays to write. So, and the fees that go with all the applications. So they did it because of the affirmative action cancellation, but even when I reassured them that it wasn't really going to impact them, at least the one Wilton student I had, it just that was the trend. So they stuck to what everybody else was doing. Again, 8 to 12 is a good range, okay? Because again, you are going to balance this by acceptance rates and say, hey, I'm going to have at least 4 universities with a 60% or higher acceptance rate, and that whose requirements match the numbers that I have and the profile that I have. So make sure you have a solid safety base, and then you could play with the rest, okay? And only 1 or 2 reach schools. I wouldn't spend too much time or money trying to go after these less than 10% acceptance rate and my numbers are very borderline situations. So all right, so let's say we have a lot of these. Now, when you click on these universities, the university profile will come up. Read through some of it. I don't recommend, so your grades and etc. That's if you're signed in, you'll find that. I don't necessarily recommend trusting the numbers that are here because they're not always updated. Sometimes they're 3 years out of date or 2 years out of date. And the current climate with, again, with the test optional thing, the numbers have really been fluctuating. Okay, so but still you can trust all the other information. So if they have programs, etc., then that you might be interested in, it's worth checking out. And of course, they'll also recommend, hey, if you genuinely like this, here's all the other options that you can look at. But that's kind of the initial quick glance. And of course, they have the admissions stats here, and acceptance is 90%, which is cool. And of course, you can filter even further by saying, hey, whereas I did admissions and I did all of these at the same time, maybe you prefer it in batches so it's not overwhelming. I mean, that's still 91. That's because I went with least selective, but that's filter it however you choose to when it comes to this point, okay? But step 1 is just clicking through and seeing how you feel about what you're seeing. Then what you want to do is go onto the university's website. So let's say you are genuinely interested, and let's say we care about, I wonder if they have this available, North Carolina Central University admission stats. And this is the admission stats thing. It should be listed on the PowerPoint that this is how you find numbers for universities. This has university admissions. So this particular university does not offer admissions numbers to us. They just give us the general information. Now, some universities do that, in which case we have no other option but to trust a third-party website like the US News or .co or Prep Scholar or whatever else. Okay, I get it. We have some ads that want to play. Okay, so in that case, if I need to know, oh, what's the average SAT requirement or GPA requirement for this university, then yeah, I might have to go to a third-party website. They have an 84% acceptance rate, which is a little bit different than College Board's 90%, but still high acceptance rate. Don't seem to require any kind of testing. Selectivity, blah, blah, blah. Notice they didn't really give us much SAT information. Oh, they did. Okay. So per section. So on a 1600 scale. What is happening right now? All right, so it's about an 800, like so. This one pretty much everyone's getting into. That's what this kind of university is. Now, if you're thinking of, let's say, NYU or something, again, type in the name of the university, admission stats. Probably didn't even spell that right. There. Oh no, I did. Okay. There are chat windows and camera windows open on my screen, so I can't always see what I'm doing. But now what you want to do is, if the option is available, you want to look at the EDU, because as I mentioned, that the blog post may be a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years out of date, and things have changed since then, and they've constantly been evolving since then. So what you want to do is go to the EDU, if available. As we saw with the previous one, it was not available. On the EDUs, they'll give you an idea of the average SAT scores or ACT scores that the university prefers. Now, what's happened because of test optional is that these numbers have gotten severely inflated because only the students who have great test scores are going to send them in. So this used to be a 1350 pre-COVID, and as universities start moving back to this test required, it's going to go down because now everyone's sending in their scores, right? So not only the students who have these top-notch crazy high scores, but also everybody else. The 1300s are going to go in again. So this should be going down, which is really only helpful if you're a current sophomore or under. But for the current juniors, you're still most likely going to get hit with these higher end numbers. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking, oh, what SAT score should I be aiming for? Well, while you don't need that 1470, I'd probably aim for at least a 1400 if you're thinking of applying to NYU. Okay. Then NYU also goes ahead and provides us with an unweighted GPA, an average unweighted GPA for most first years. Again, if these numbers are not available to you from your school, then just sit down, have your grades pulled up on like half your screen, and then a GPA calculator on the second half, and just sit down and calculate your GPA. There's also other information available, such as post-grad success, graduation rates are also important. Return sophomore year, first year, there we go, graduate that much, because you want to know what kind of atmosphere you will also be in. So just other stats available. Again, I prioritize the test score and GPA requirements, but that's how you go about. And then there are other points that we do further research on. So let's say you run your first search and this is what happened. This is a time-consuming process, but it's really time-consuming only in the beginning when you're still learning how to conduct the search. One of my students and I sat down for an hour, which is usually how long our sessions are. And while we were going through this, within that hour, we knocked out 6 or 7 universities just quickly because we're like, oh, now you know what you're looking for. Oh, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Okay, move on, move on, move on. So it can go fairly quickly as you do more. Now, what do you do after that? Or what do you do if you don't have a major? So first up, if you don't know what field it is that you want to go into, you want to look at the university and say, okay, how's this university going to help me figure it out? Because you're putting in a lot of money into this. University education, no matter where you really end up going, is not cheap. And even if it is affordable, even if that finances are not an issue, you're just putting time there. Time is not refundable. So you want to make sure that you're picking the programs that are genuinely beneficial for you if you're the teenager or student, and in parents' case, it's beneficial for your teenager, that it really is the right atmosphere. So first up, look at how is this university going to help me figure out what it is that I want to, or what I want to do. That could be through the Career Resource Center. And we'll visit a career page just a second, but it could be through the Career Resource Center. So you might be saying NYU Career Resources, and some of them have career counseling. A lot of them will have career counseling, but you really want to look at the breakdown of that program. So some will say we'll do personality tests, which is fairly common at this point. And then you might have a couple sessions with a career counselor. Okay. Some might say we'll do a personality test, a couple sessions with a career counselor, but we're going to take it a step further. And based on your personality test and everything we've talked about, we might even have you talk to alumni who work in these few fields that your personality test has narrowed your career options down to, and see what you like from there. Okay, so then the university will help you connect with alumni. They're not just going to leave you to it. And that's great. Some universities, if it's not the career center, might say, okay, well, you're an exploratory major or an undecided major. And these are the few classes that we absolutely require you to take. And it's not just the general education requirements that pretty much every student has to do, which are the basic histories and math and sciences and foreign language and English, which, by the way, if you walk in with AP credits, you're knocking out your general education requirements. That's really all you're doing, which is great because it saves you money in the long run. It saves you thousands in the long run. But that's what your APs go towards, is those base general education requirements that we in the US have students do as a way to buy them some time before they have to declare their choice of education field. Because in other countries, in Europe, in Asia, When you go to college, you're already committed to a certain path of a career path. We don't do that in the US. We allow students to change their majors and everything, but that means we have to put in a buffer somehow. And that buffer will be those general education classes that you're taking. And your AP credits will go towards knocking some of those out. So if you pass, let's say, AP Stats or AP Calc BC, then you're knocking off at least one semester of some math requirement, unless it has to do with your major. Then you may be required to take the class anyway. So I was a biology major, but I walked in with English credits, so I was able to knock out English. I walked in with biology credits too, but then they said, but grad schools or med schools, back then I thought I was going into medicine, want to see this done at a college level. They tried to pull the same thing with calculus, but I'd done 3 years of calculus in high school, 2 years of calculus in high school, 1 year pre-calc. Yeah, 10th grade was pre-calc, and then calculus, and then calc BC. So I'd done a lot of calculus. So when I walked into calculus 1 as freshman first semester, I knew everything that was on the syllabus. Spent 2 years covering that. So at that point, I just learned how to re-register myself online, which you can do that. And I registered myself for calculus too. So yes, I followed their guidelines for biology and started with biology 1, even though I had spent 3 years doing biology in high school, but I didn't do that with math. But that's how it works with the general education and such. So now, in addition to the general education, what's happening with the career path options? So is there some kind of mentorship program that exists? Because again, might be through the career center. It might be, if it's not a mentorship program, it might be classes that you have to take that have professionals from different fields coming in as guest lecturers, and then you are learning about their careers or that field to help you narrow this down. Okay. So every university works differently in how this particular undecided is organized. But the first stop, if you're starting out, is to look at their career resource center just to say, hey, at least I know that this mentoring program exists. Outside of that, you can look at the academic advising section to see what they have to say about the undecided. You can also, when you go to either,
Got ready? Yes.
hello? Questions? Okay. So you can look at the career center, or sorry, what was I saying? Yes. So it will be organized a little bit differently, all right, per university. And it's basically that's part of the research process. Again, it all gets faster and faster as you start learning what to look for in your process. So in the beginning, it might feel slow as you're clicking around. Oh, I was saying that when you go to these information sessions at your high school, so when you go to the the marketing representative that came in and now wants to talk to you about their university, you can ask them about it. So you didn't even have to go on the tour. But if you do happen to go on the tour, then ask them about it as well. What do you do to help students figure out what it is they want to do? Some have a passive approach, some have a very active approach. You want to know. Okay. Um, and one thing to keep in mind, I'm going to refer to the point I made earlier, which is that universities really are about being proactive. No one's going to tell you to go to the Career Resource Center if you need some help. Maybe academic advising might kind of mention it, depends on the academic advisor, but no one's really going to say, hey, go knock on this door. It's up to you to do the research online because everything at this point happens to be online, and then schedule your appointment with the career counselor at the career center and go on from there. Okay. So, yes, you'll get help, but it's your responsibility to knock on the door first, which means you have to know which door to at least start knocking on and then get rerouted from there if needed. All right. So, after that, and career centers. So, you know which one I like? I like University of Miami's website. Um, Again, the chat window's up, so I can't really see everything. There we go. Top Career Center. So there's another one I like. I think it's Boston University or Boston College, and I keep mixing those up. So I'm not gonna try to do that now. But here we go. This is what I was looking for. Is it's kind of cool because some career centers will actually divide you out by your major. So then based on your major, they'll actually take it a step further and have support groups available for you, which might have some alumni and it'll have current students available as well. Um, And then they have other tips and such that are relevant just to you from that major and any kind of upcoming events and so on. So, see, you have cane to cane mentors, which are, again, former people who used to attend the university and now work in that particular field. So, that's what I like. Most universities will have these handshake programs, which is a software program which that really just has it's a job database. That's really what it is. It's a job database that's only specific to university students. So companies go directly to universities and they want to post their entry level positions or their internship positions, and they'll go to the career center. A career center will then post it on Handshake, and all current students and even alumni in some cases will have access to that database. All right. Um, so that's nice. And then look at that. You have a coach via Zoom, but you can also go in person for or go into the building for in-person coaching, which is also nice. They have a lot of hours, and, again, I think if you were looking at a sample of just what's the best of the best or what's the most that can be offered, I would just look through the features, even if you're not planning to attend University of Miami, I would just look through their features and see what's available so you have a comparison point to say, "Hey, but that like, now we know what could be available, so what is available at the university I care about?" Alright? Um, and then and in this case, let's see, students, and then you might have psychology, STEM, blah, blah, blah. And if nothing else, you can at least schedule an appointment with your career counselor and figure out what it is you want to study. Resume scanner is online, which is interesting. Most universities will help you with your resume and cover letter. So that's part two, actually, of the Career Center is yes, they might help you figure out what it is you want to do. But then the other question is, great, I have been a student for approximately what people start school around age 5. So at least 17 to 18 years of my life. How are you now going to help me transition to my career life? Resumes and cover letters, very common. So that's like the base level that every university will offer. Then after that, what's happening? Like we said, the mentoring programs, career, are they going to do a mock interview with you to teach you how to actually go about your first interviews or your job, several different types of situations with job interviews and answer questions? Um, what is happening ultimately? Are there video record resources available as well as the in-person resources, or are they really offloading most things to video? That's also important because some people really prefer that one-on-ones. So look into all of that. Then, of course, because we are still going to school for, well, school, you want to look at the academic support, the writing center, any kind of tutoring available. Usually it will be older students tutoring younger students, which is fine, especially for the Gen Chem 101 equivalent classes. Um, and then co-ops. So what are co-ops? Co-ops are programs that allow students to take a semester off and work in the field of their study. So it's not just some part-time job, it's a full-time position in the industry of your interest. So you get to actually see what it looks like to be in that atmosphere and to connect everything theoretical that you've learned in class to the practical and find out, oh, that sounded good in theory and textbook, but now this is not the atmosphere or culture I want to be in. Okay. The workplace culture I want to be in. Co ops are actually assigned by the university. So you don't have to go out looking for these opportunities. You simply have to apply for the co op through the right department, the right applications, etc. But then the university will find you the placement. Okay. And it's one semester. You do not have to take any classes at that time. You're not a student at that time. You're just working full time. So you're earning a salary at that time too. Um, good. I recommend this for students who are not so good at sitting in the classroom for too long. So most of these co-ops, freshmen can't really take them. It's going to be after you finish your freshman year, probably that summer will be the first time you can take a co-op. And some universities will actually, it's automatic co-ops. So Drexel University, for example, has just co-ops programmed into their entire curriculum for every student, no matter what major they are. Then there's universities like Purdue where you just submit the one application and automatically you're part of this 5-year thing where after your freshman year, every other semester you're doing a co-op. It's good if you're trying to save money on college and earn while you're also getting education. And also, if a company has spent that much time training you and teaching you, you probably have, even if it's you probably have a guaranteed job after you graduate. And if not then you at least have legitimate experience, which I'm not saying you have to do a co-op. You can always just do internships and collect that experience as well. But co-ops are just another option. And then in some universities with co-op programs, it's like UVA, University of Virginia, they'll just say, oh, whichever semester you want to take a co-op for, just submit an application. So every time I want to do a co-op, it's not an automatic, you're integrated into this 5-year thing like Purdue. Instead, it's okay, you pick what semester and submit your application then. All right. So just something to be aware of as a program that exists out there. Then, of course, check out the study abroads and the student lives, the student organizations, as we saw in the filters of if you're interested in theater. Okay, well, will they let students who, let's say, did theater in high school, but are not trying to pursue theater in college as a major or a field of study, but want to do it for fun? Will they let students like that do performances? Will can students like them perform, or any other field? What's happening? Do they have a Quidditch team if you're interested in that, or Shakespeare in the Park, whatever it might be? Okay, what is student life going to look like? Most universities will let you start your own clubs if you basically can gather enough students to do it. But then the question is, do you really feel like taking that initiative? Because most of my students have just said, nah, I'd rather just participate in something. I don't want that responsibility of coordinating and starting and so on. And finally, it's going to be the mental health slash disabilities. So with that, anxiety and depression have become very, very common amongst the younger populations, millennials included. So now the question is, great, if it is so common, what is the university going to do to help me address this? And how do I know that my teenager is going to be supported if needed? And that could also be test anxiety for when midterms come around or when finals come around. What's happening on campus? And it might also be disabilities, like wheelchair access is needed, or I've had students who, or even in presentations, I've had attendees who needed wheelchair access because they had, let's say, cerebral palsy, or maybe they were born prematurely and have some level of cognitive differences, not something that other students would notice. In fact, no one would notice unless you're grading that student's paper. Then you notice, or unless you're watching the student process information and then you notice. Okay. So just be aware of all the resources, even if you feel you're not going to use them. All right. Any questions so far before we jump to the tours? Just post them in the chat and I will happily address anything or pull up any websites that are needed. Is everyone awake? Because I think I'm moving quickly, but I'm trying to do it with respect to time at the same time. All right. Then next up, we have college tours. So with college tours, oh, there's websites I want to show you. So I'm just going to leave it to college tours. I'm going to leave it in this view. Okay, so when it comes to college tours, first up, I recommend that if you're going on vacation somewhere, or driving through, or visiting family in a different state or different part of even just Connecticut or Massachusetts or the tri-state area, then drive through the campus, or if you have time, then park and walk through the campus. Does not matter if you are not planning to apply to that university. If it was on the way, just go check it out. Why? Because this really helps students get a better idea of what the different types of campuses and university sizes look and feel like. If you start this when the teenagers are younger, it really helps address this boatload of anxiety that kicks in usually around, well, this time, junior year. So, because now students start thinking this is all real, but we also have to do our AP testing and we also have to do our college applications, which are coming up in a few months. All of this, it just all kind of kicks in at the same time. So, doing the college and then there's that fear of, but I have to know what it is I want to study because so and so knows what they want to study and I don't seem so put together compared to my peers. Um, or it's just that bubble of stress and emotion that kicks in. So to help kind of diffuse some of that, you want to start just driving through universities so that it, or just looking at universities so that it kind of takes away that tension and it becomes a habit. And when it becomes a, oh, nothing is at stake here type of approach, then teenagers start getting comfortable with that approach, knowing that there's no risk, that they're not going to make this wrong decision for their life and then end up messing everything up or something. So that's one thing is just drive through even if you're not planning to attend. Now, if you are planning to attend the university, just make sure, or I recommend, I am not going to say this is the only way to do it, but I recommend that you do all the different filters and search criteria and everything we talked about with the online research first. Based on that, if you find, and that also includes the virtual tours and presentations and the in-school marketing presentations, then based on all of that, if it looks like this is the university that you would seriously like to consider, then it's worth it to spend the time and money to visit that university. Okay. Now, of course, if it can be done in a day trip, then by all means, you don't need to do all that research and everything. You can always just check it out if you'd like. Okay. Um, that's kind of my recommendation. So when you are at universities, here's what to do and what to look for. So first up, how active is the campus? Meaning, how busy is it? Is it really a place where students hang out, or is it a place where students come, go to class, and then just leave? Because those are called commuter campuses, where most students are local, and then you have a few dorm buildings around, but most students just go home and they have to be in time for dinner, or they have part-time jobs afterwards. So they're not hanging out around campus. So how active is the campus? And also how diverse is the campus? If that's a point of interest to you. Then this is an idea I received from a previous client actually, which was they recorded a video of the teenager sharing her opinions and first impressions. So they did the whole tour, they hung out afterwards, which is something I highly recommend doing. But then the teenager recorded a video of herself and her impressions. Oh, the tour was da 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 da, and the food was like this because we, hung out afterwards and tried some of the dining options, etc. And it was just a 2 to 3 minute video. This was not being posted anywhere, but it helps. It helps when when decision making time comes 9 months down the line or a year down the line, depending on when you started your college search or when you did the tour. When you're not making the decision for over a year, you may not have the time to do that tour again. At least not visit every university. If you're considering five or narrowed down to four, you might not have the time to visit all those 3 to 4 universities. So that's when those videos come in handy because who knows better what's important to you better than you, right? So better than the teenager, no one else is really going to know as much as what's important to them. So why not have them make that video? The other thing I recommend is actually taking a lot of photos around campus of the teenager because part of your demonstrated interest, what you can do is actually post some of those pictures online on the teenager social media and tag the universities with whatever line or two you want to make of dining hall at da 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 da. It was a blast, or food was great, etc. Um, and just tag the university so they know, hey, this kid is kind of serious about us, is seriously checking us out. So again, serious contender for when their application comes in. Okay. Then, like I said, hang around the campus after the tour. You have to remember, we all have to remember that a tour is a marketing experience. It is curated from top to bottom. The stories, the statues you visit, the layout, everything you hear, everything you see is all been thought out by a team before you were allowed to be a part of it. So you want to step away from the marketing experience and now take a tour of your own. So if you do have a field you're interested in studying, then go visit that building, go visit the science building or the theater or the business building, whatever it is, go visit that area. Go read the bulletin boards, see what kind of events are happening around campus or even just in that building or in that field. Look at everything that you can. Visit the student union, like the student hangout centers basically, right? Where you have the major food courts and see what's happening there. So take a tour of your own and take your time doing it and then figure out, okay, can you really see yourself in this atmosphere? All right. And then after that, talk to students and staff members. This, by the way, I'm asking teenagers to do or future students to do, not the parents. Parents, you take a step back because sometimes it can be a little overwhelming or creepy if you're approaching current students. So you take a step back. This is for the teenagers to step up and do is talk to the staff members, just anyone, even if it's someone working in the cafeteria, even if it's just anybody. Okay. And make note of their names and also just what you talked about. Because even if, let's say, you do this now, or yeah, now, because spring break is gone. So, now, as in, in you don't want to visit colleges in May or June because there'll be empty campuses. But let's say you do this in July, then application season comes in, your application's due in November or even in January. Well, you could say, "Oh, I talked to Jenna in the food court, and she was telling me that da 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 about this university." Well, that's great because a lot of universities have questions part of the application that say, why us? And if you can get that specific in your application to say, hey, this is the level of interest I took in your university, that I took my time and talked to people to figure out their experiences, you're showing that you went above and beyond and that you were actually serious. Okay. That's all demonstrated interest is showing that you are serious as opposed to everybody else who might be blindly sending in an application. So talk to people. And that also actually includes the marketing representatives that come to your high school. Make sure you know their names, make sure you ask questions. And that way, that might be something else you toss into your why us as well. Mark came to visit my high school. And it was interesting how he mentioned that there is this university college program, which actually is a thing at American University. It's called the University College Program, which helps freshmen integrate better, but we also get to address these global issues and work on a project together. So we have a common purpose we're working for, and it really helps break the ice. That's good to know, right? Okay, so that covers that part. Now, what to ask? First step, ask how easy it is to register for classes. So one of the things happening right now at UConn is that because of basketball, because of the cost of education increasing, more students than UConn expected decided to attend UConn. So usually universities will accept about double or triple the number of students than they are actually expecting to attend. Well, what happened is because they think, they figure, oh, these other students will probably accept at other various universities. And UConn, as an example of a university, really has to protect its yield. It has to say, oh, we have 6,000 empty seats. Well, we have to fill these 6,000 empty seats because otherwise we're losing money on tuition or room and board or whatever else. So we have to fill these seats. So universities will accept 2 to 3 times more than they actually figure will attend. Well, in UConn's case, of those accepted batch, more than they expected decided to attend. So now what's happening is that you have the same or fewer, you have the classes that are offered, but you have more students trying to register for those classes. And that means that maybe you don't get the class you need at the time you need it. So will that delay graduation in any way? Or will you be taking those classes over the summer? Or is the school going to add in more sessions for that class, more lecture sessions for that class, over the common classes? That's something you need to ask. Okay. Because that's one of those, it's not listed on the website and really hard to figure that out unless you hear current students talking about it or you hear it from the university representatives. Okay, then of course, okay, so I see the question in the chat and I'm going to finish these points and then I'll address that about the timeline of the tours. So safety measures is another common one, particularly, well, unfortunately in the world, but for females, it's common. A lot of universities will mention it in their initial presentations, and there will always be the parent who does ask about safety measures. But make sure you ask about safety measures. Does the university have a campus police department? Now, something to note, campus police, not real police. They don't really have the same rights and abilities to do things as normal police, but they're probably connected to the local police department. So they can then make the reports or whatever, and then transfer that over to the local police department. Some universities, if the classes are late at night, then they might offer rides. Particularly more than classes, usually exams are late at night. Our chem exams would start at 8 p.m. and end at 10 p.m. So if at that point, if I need a ride to the parking lot or to the dorm, is there a shuttle service if it's a particularly large campus? Check that out. A lot of the universities, you'll see these blue poles with the blue light on top, which are phones that link directly to they're at various places around campus, and they're phones that link directly to the university's police department in case you feel something's happening. But ask. Then, of course, what do they do to help freshmen integrate? So all kinds of different programs are available. If a student is in a dorm, then chances are that the RA, the residential advisor, is in charge of actually coming up or executing on certain projects like, oh, decorate this door for decorate your bedroom, your dorm door for Halloween, and hosting competitions or hosting movie nights and all kinds of other stuff. But check it out, right? What is the school doing? What is the dorm doing? What if you decide not to live on campus? Then what are options available to you? And so on. And then, of course, dining options. Is the food good? Common, right? Of course, career transition. Remember, we talked about this earlier as a online research that you might have done, but it doesn't hurt to ask. We talked about the admission stats thing. The other resources, but before we go into the resources, I want to address the question in the chat, which is, does it make sense to do college tours over the summer? A lot of universities are not actually going to offer college tours over the summer. They're going to, and I'm pulling up the timeline now just because we need visuals. Not that. Oh, actually this. So we have a lot of juniors. So this is actually what your summer is coming up going to look like. But usually what's going to happen is that May and June will be closed because it's probably summer first semester. So very few students are choosing to take classes in that time. And then go from usually 4th of July to end of August, roughly the end of August or mid-August. That's summer semester 2. Majority students start coming back in that time because they want to take, it's like 6 weeks of really intense going at it for a class that you want to take now instead of putting it off when you have 4 other classes at the same time, right? So that hard class, you want to get it over with and have it be the only class you think about and focus on. So a lot of students will come back for that. And so usually college tours will be more active, and that's when you can do the tours. Because campuses are active. So you will also get a better idea of the university atmosphere, because this and fall are really, I mean, fall, yes, but for current juniors, rising seniors, you might have a lot going on at that time and you might not have time to visit. So second semester of summer is a good time to visit. All right. Um, and by the way, just I am on this slide. I want to mention that next month we have a presentation on the timeline for current juniors. So all of you current juniors who are rising seniors and you need to know what you should be working on, when you should be working on it, all of this that you're seeing on the screen and kind of are hoping that I'll go into, but I can't because of timing. We have a presentation just for you because I think that this is something everybody needs to know and you should be addressing so you have max stressful load out of the way and well balanced and have a social life over the summer, as opposed to putting things off to the school year and then really stressing and burning out and anxiety and stress and everything kicking in at the same time. So this presentation, and I think it's already on the library's website for you to register. If not, keep an eye out for that email. But unfortunately, due to limited time, I can't just, and also to stay on topic, I can't just go right into that timeline thing. But with timeline, when it comes to college tours and college searches, ideally, it's best to start in sophomore year because it gives you time to start slowly and ease into the process. But of course, since we have a lot of juniors on the call, you're already in this process. I imagine a lot of you already have at least 2 to 3 universities you kind of think you want to apply to. Keep doing the research. Like I said, go visit the college search database, then start filtering from there based on the topics that we've talked about. And then keep narrowing it down further and further. So another resource, so we're talking about resources now. And with the resources, we talked about the College Board College Search. Campustours.com is also a good one if you want to so to navigate a university's website is really annoying. So I usually let Google type in the name of the university, campus tours option, or you can go to the campustours.com, and that really just lets you type in the name of the university you want, and it takes you directly to that university's, let's do American, because that's the first thing I could think of right now. So you go to American University, and then it shows you, oh, virtual tour option, and it takes you directly to the university's page or YouTube page, or any kind of social media is also available. It also takes you to their website, usually directly to the usually, sometimes it'll take you directly to the schedule a tour page, and sometimes it's general, but it'll kind of help you find out if there's virtual tour available. And look, you jump directly to the campus map, so you didn't have to go digging around for it. They did it for you, and so on. Okay, so I like campus tours. The other resource, it's also listed on the PowerPoint, but since I'm on the internet, I'm just going to jump directly to it, is Unigo College Reviews. Unigo College Unigo has a college resource, like a college search portion, and it also has a scholarships database. But you just want to need to enter the college reviews. And then from here, if you type in the name of the university, you'll probably have to create an account. Now, the workaround to that is if you actually just go by state, and then I just picked Massachusetts. It's like the easiest one right now. You'll have all the universities listed out, but I'm just going to go for the easy. Let's go with something a little bit different than I did last time. Let's go with that. Okay. Then what happens is you'll get opinions from students from current and past students. So this isn't just flimsy, they hired people to do it, but you'll get opinions on politically active, what are the food options like, do professors spend time explaining things, and so on. Again, I would be hesitant to trust the stats from any website that's not the EDU, because they may be outdated. Other than that, you have all these other reviews. And then this one, actually, it seems to be a little bit outdated. There's some that are 2024, 2023. Looks like UMass hasn't fully updated, but these are still very helpful to read through. You have to have a bad experience with a professor, etc. Sometimes you hear about, oh, this university was awesome. I think for Boston University, it was awesome, but it was so expensive. I wish I'd gone somewhere else. So things like that also pop up. All right, back to the PowerPoint. So the Unigo College Reviews we went over that. And then of course you can always just type in the name of the university and then just virtual campus tour or college tour registration or whatever else. Now, in terms of books, these are two common ones that I've heard referred to. I mean, I've heard as if like I heard it only once or something, but no, I've constantly heard referred to. I am not the biggest fan of these just because some of the information is just very, very general. It's nice. I would recommend checking them out of the library first, seeing how you like them. And honestly, you could even check out the 2023 versions or 2022 versions because you're not going to find these huge dramatic differences in culture of the university or something, or even programs offered between a year or two. So you can check out previous versions as well, just to see how you feel about it, because I've just found that a lot of information is generic and you almost could swap out names of the universities. So it's not really as helpful for me. But again, you might like having a list of universities at your fingertips for reference. All right. So then moving on to the mindset idea. I recommend not having a dream school. Now that we've talked about how to conduct the search, we've looked at all the priorities and details you should look at in a search. What I recommend doing instead is thinking of the bigger picture. What kind of life do you want to have outside of college or post college? What kind of career do you want to have? What kind of travel experiences? What do you want life to look like? Okay. And then almost reverse engineering. So you have the big picture in mind, whatever that big picture might be. That big picture might be, hey, I want to be able to travel and work at the same time. I don't care what it is I'm working on. I want to be able to travel and work at the same time. Or I want to be able to stay in this big city area, whatever, again. Or I really want to work in film and I want to be in New York or Atlanta, some part of Georgia or LA, wherever else. But have some kind of big picture, whatever it is, 1 or 2 points. I'm not saying you have to have your entire life figured out, but 1 or 2 points that you're not willing to compromise on. And then use the university and its resources to reverse engineer that. Make your list so strong and so precise that no matter which university you get into, you love it. That you know exactly the people you need to talk to when you're there, the resources the university has for you, the opportunities it has for you. You know it from the very beginning and you like it. All right. That's how you want to think about this college search approach, because some students get into this dream college, this dream mindset, or this because everybody's doing it, I need to go there too. And that doesn't mean you'll be happy there. And starting your new life, your real adult life, so to speak, in debt also may not be the best way that you want to start your life, where you're now desperately trying to find some job because your payments have to start after 6 months after graduation. So then you have to just suck it up and accept any job, even if you don't like it. And you don't want to put yourself in that situation. Okay. Again, just points to consider. I'm not saying you have to do it this way or you have to do it that way, but just factors and thought process. All right, so what should you do next? Well, start your college search or work on it because we have a lot of juniors, so I imagine you've already started, but keep working on it and keep tapering away through the research process. Again, it speeds up as you go on. Conduct virtual tours. And I know right now APs are coming up. So, really, right now, I would say prioritize your APs and grades. But then after APs are over, after March, what is it, 19th, that the last day of APs, after that, go back to conducting your college tours before you have to worry about your finals. Again, this could be spent 20 minutes in front of the TV or 20 minutes when you could be on social media, you're doing this instead, or 5 minutes doing this instead. Um, but just find the time to do this. Okay. Then, if you're currently a sophomore or really a sophomore, take a practice SAT or ACT because for the current juniors, you've already done your SAT, you know your scores at this point. So, everybody else or sophomores, take a practice SAT. You can do that on Princeton Review where it's completely free. Just type in Princeton Review, free SAT, or Princeton Review, free ACT, and go from there for registration purposes. All right. Just to summarize, round out, or not even summarize, just to round out the talk. If you have any questions, now is a good time to ask on any field whatsoever. And again, I want to emphasize that we do have a talk just for the juniors, the current juniors. We have a talk coming up next month completely free, just like this one. Yes, it will be recorded, but it's really, really important that you attend because I know there will be questions about recommendations and demonstrated interest and what do we do for a college essay? When should we be writing our supplementals and tours and financial aid stuff? So come to that talk and we will talk about everything in detail. All right. And once again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at any point. And oh, so when will I have time to discuss gap years? Yes. And gap years, we can talk about in particular, let me actually talk about it now. So when it comes to gap years, the you have two ways you can do gap years when it comes to registering. The first is if you have a current junior going into senior year, you can go through the entire applications process. You can get into the university, and I've had a student do this. She was accepted and she went through the process, she was accepted, and she kind of said, "Okay, well, UConn right now seems like the best financial option." Then she knew that, finished out her senior year. She or when she got accepted into UConn, she basically said, "Hey, I'd like to defer for a year." So deferring for a year basically means that you're just saying, "Hey, can I come in a year later than I'm originally scheduled for?" UConn said yes, because they'll ask you what are your plans and so on. And she spent 3 months in Peru because she'd also spent so much time taking Spanish in high school that she wanted to practice it. So she did a cultural exchange program in Peru and she spent some time there. Um, you're welcome. For anybody else who needs to leave, I know we went a little bit late. So if you need to leave, then that's perfectly okay. Thank you so much for attending. To address the gap year thing. So she spent 3 months there and then she came back and worked for 3 months to get some money. And then she spent 3 months traveling in Southeast Asia. And then she came back. Was it Southeast Asia? Yeah, she was Southeast Asia. And then she came back again. And then she was working again for 3 months before she started college. But while she was in Peru, this was during her what would have been her first semester of college, she was applying for schools again in case she could get in somewhere else as well. So that's one way you could do your applications process. The second way you could do it is you just take the gap year and you delay your entire applications process by a year. So it depends on which approach you feel comfortable with when it comes to um, hey, do we really need to know and secure an admission somewhere before we take a gap year? Or is it okay if we just take the gap year and figure out the year first, and then we'll just apply during our experience? Because sometimes the experiences are abroad and you don't know if what Wi-Fi is going to be like, or you just want to enjoy your time abroad, whatever it is you're doing, as opposed to worrying about getting your essays and your recommendations and your test score sent in, doing your virtual interviews and so on. So those are two approaches when it comes to applications. Now, there are lots of options as to what you could do for a gap year. That unfortunately I can't really spend too much time right now covering, but you could volunteer. You can, and there are organizations. I actually, you know what? I can cover it because thank God I did my homework for myself. But if you go on my website, there is actually a topic for gap years. I forgot about this and I'm so glad I have it here. But you can actually look at everything, including I mentioned a few ideas for funding. There's also a list of organizations on there for that you can partner with if you're interested, instead of doing just a backpacking trip somewhere, um, resources. There's gap year organizations that are listed on my website. Um, and you can just check them out. And the organizations are divided by whatever experience you want to have. If you want to have a cultural experience, if you want to have it by environmental. And yes, since the website is still, we're working on it a little bit, the pictures are not all there as I'd like them, but I would like all these to be links, but right now, again, work in progress. But outdoors type, cultural exchange and language. Oh, and that's right. There's also I forgot it was recorded. Thank you, Sarah. So that gap year talk that happened at the library, it's also recorded. So it should be available on the library's YouTube page. So you'll be able to find it and watch that for more ideas as well. So, okay. If not, then everybody, thank you so much for attending.